hello you wonderful people out there, and welcome to my first episode of the medieval area in Planet Coaster. Well, actually in Camel Kingdom. So it is the fourth area of this park. It is called in today's episode, you've seen already the first little intro shots and you've seen the thumbnail. So basically you will be seeing a statue of a knight at the end of this episode. But basically that's all I showed so far. There won't be much more of items, so to say, in this episode, but there will be a whole bunch of preparation going on in the background, as well as a coaster layout. I'm going to talk about this coaster layout while we are building it, but first of all, let me start with a whole lot of things we have to talk about. And before we go into it, a big thanks to all of you that have been explain a little bit more. If you were right with your suggestions, my voice, sorry, with your suggestions, it's right is not the right word. It's what I could take out of them. So first of all, let's start with a comment of Albin Lungman. He said, for the medieval area, I would love if you made a really dirty and rough, sort of broken down and realistic, not super fancy and beautiful with Princess Castle, etc, etc, like everyone else does. Well, if you guys know me out there, you know probably that I try to focus on different things than the usual stuff. It's been more or less like a little bit of a hobby of mine to try and break the game mechanics and pieces to go into a new theme that actually isn't existing, and hence why we don't actually have a medieval theme in the game. We have a fantasy theme in the game. So quite often fantasy is kind of the same as medieval, because medieval has some fantasy-ish and basically it has fantasy-ish feel to it, and the atmosphere of a medieval beautiful area with castles and princesses and stuff is very inspiring for fantasy-ish areas, but we won't do that. So basically, and it's already to answer some of the questions, because we have off the coast of France that's just filled with beautiful medieval architecture. I've never been there myself, but even the pictures give me so many ideas about sort of thing you could make in the medieval area. Here's a link to the tourist site for the place. I checked this one, it's beautiful, and definitely a lot of influence will be taken from this. But let me get this straight. This area won't be a fantasy-ish medieval part where you can be happy you can expect the princess to walk outside a beautiful styled room. This will be a mixture of a rough area and a very dirty, poor area where the little rafting track you've seen is going through. So the basic idea is we will have a little town in here, which is Fort Camelot, by the way, and we will have this coaster going through, and today I'm going to reveal like everything about the idea, because this coaster will be the Black Death, and the Black Death is already an idea. I can't find the comment. I'm so sad, because there was a comment a month ago when I first said that we are going to have the medieval area as next area. There was the idea of having a coaster going through the city, kind of like the Black Death, and this is the story of this coaster we are going to build right now. So let me explain a little bit, because you can see the building process kind of quickly already in the background. I've tweaked a lot of things in off screen, but the general layout will keep basically the same as you can see it right now. I'm taking the Raptor track or the T-Rex trap. I'm not quite sure. The in-game one is not that accurate, which I wouldn't criticize Frontier too much, because time being when they produced the game, and this track especially, which has been already in since Alpha 3, RMC just had some very early tests and no actual content revealed about their actual track. So it's not really that close to the real life version, but I wanted to keep that one and try this one, because I think it's very flexible. There's not too much going on. Those two ones that will be built this year from RMC, the Wonder Woman one, and I forgot the name of the other one, but basically they have the same layout. So the only thing I took out of this one is basically the start. This kind of little drop to the right hand side, and then it's going up again until then you go into the first steep drop. But after this it's pretty much random. Of course I wanted to keep some RMC-ish elements, like very nice and quick transitions to the left and to the right, with a lot of airtime giving you given by the different rotations of the train, so to say. That is really like throwing you to the left and to the right by just the fluid elements of the track. So I think I tried it out a little bit. The track is kind of fun to ride. I'm not quite sure if that is too accurate in terms of what could be done with the track. I mean, the idea about this is basically more or less like Taron. I mean, Taron is basically a big inspiration for this one, but also I wanted to try to go as much as possible away from Taron, because, you know, Taron is just amazing. It's also in a medieval area, maybe a little bit more Nordish kind of medieval thing, but or Nordic inspired, I don't know, while I'm trying to go more like mid-European or even Southern European in the style, but you can't really tell the difference, to be honest. But yeah, I wanted to separate myself a little bit more from Taron. But basically, well, the similarity is there. We have a coaster that is highly interacting with the overall area. We don't have that many track interactions, to be honest, with each other, but I really wanted to focus on, yeah, simply making this one going through the whole city, the whole town. And honestly, it does work kind of well, because I'm already quite far into this area. I have some buildings already plopped down and stuff to see if it's working or not, and we will have some nice elements here and there. But well, it's yeah, it's a test. I don't know. I'm very curious to hear what you think of the overall layout of the track, because I think you have to imagine that this is a coaster which is built especially for this area. So it's planned together with the area like Taron was, because Taron is also a very unusual layout, if you want so. It's not that kind of very normal inspired layout, and Phantasialand in general is a park that really focuses on own layouts. I mean, we can also expect from the new Vekoma flying coaster which is being built that it will be quite different from what actual flying coasters are laid out, basically also because of Vekoma is going into a completely new type of coaster where you don't have that many comparisons out there. But even if that would be a normal B&M-ish flying coaster, if Phantasialand wants them to build one, you can be sure that they're going for a kind of different approach on the layout itself. It has to be highly integrated into, or very nicely integrated into this area, and so it is with this track as well. Still, I wanted to keep somehow the basic elements and the basic rules about a realistic coaster, so that we don't have too crazy, you know, inversions, and don't have too much high-speed transitions that wouldn't actually work and stuff. But yeah, judge it by yourself. I'm quite sure. I'm quite happy with it, to be honest. But I'm quite sure that you out there will have some more improvement ideas. But anyways, so now you can see I'm going to build the knight statue in the end, which will be kind of, you know, one of the highlights in this area. So we will have this statue of a knight as central piece in this little entrance area of the medieval area, which will be separated into two different areas, so to say. Like, we will have this main area, which is basically a little town, which is not too shabby, but it's also not a shiny, bright, you know, nice fantasy medieval. It's a very rough medieval little town. It won't be nice and bright, but it also won't be too dirty. But then again, we will also have an area further back in this area that will be featuring a lot more wooden houses, a lot more broken down houses, a lot more rubbish out there. We will have some fields of corn and stuff. We will also have, yeah, just like a little bit more dirty area in general. And yeah, we will also have a little bit of a, yeah, it's not really a castle, it's more like a watchtower thingy on top of the mountain, but there the magic begins already, because basically in medieval area, in the area of the medieval, you don't really the era, by the way, you don't really find watchtowers, because essentially a watchtower is a castle and vice versa. I mean, the function of a watchtower defined by the Romans in very early state of the human history is basically to get a broad overview of the area. While furthermore into history, they started to advance and create better watchtowers that are also more secured by having thicker walls, by being a little bit more secured with guards, and also having some security systems and defensive stuff in there. So effectively, watchtowers became castles, and sometimes it's, you know, you can also see castles which are defined as castles, which are basically just slightly advanced watchtowers. So per definition, a castle is a watchtower, and a castle and a watchtower are kind of the same thing if you just look at them from the standpoint of what it is made for. So you have a better overview of the entire area, and over time they became a little up to a giant house where you can host a lot of people in that are only there to be watching what's going on out there. And you have to imagine that in the medieval era, there was not like that big country. There were like small strongholds of little societies that were fighting against each other. So we had a very, very broad landscape of different small areas which have been reigned by different kings and queens and just lords, so to say, and they all fought against each other. So every stronghold and every fort, every castle has to be secured on its own, and that's why some watchtowers became simply castles. So the starting point was basically a watchtower, or like a little fort, which then was evolved into a castle area. So basically that's the reason why I will be building some kind of watchtower. It's not that big castle, so don't expect a big castle with a lot of walls and different big rooms. It will be a very tiny thing just on top of this mountain to be also like a little bit of a coverage of the lift hill of this coaster, but nothing more. We will have some shops down there, so interact a little bit with the castle wall. If it's going to work, I also try to get a nice viewpoint from over there for the guests and put like a vista point there. But yeah, basically that's it. Now let me try to get into some more comments, because there are also some more interesting comments. For example, Paul Greg, I don't know. For the castle area, it would be cool to see what you could make with the gem pieces, like stained glass window, as centerpiece for a castle or cathedral. Though it depends on what kind of medieval theme you're going for: semi-realism, French chateau, gothic, or high fantasy. As for your prop mini-series and path decoration would be awesome. Okay, cool, let's talk about that in another video. But for your comment regarding the medieval area, so yes, I will try to do something with I won't call it cathedral, it will be a little church, or maybe even just a chapel. Because that's another point which is important that we are going to talk about that. Basically, you have two different approaches of a little medieval city. Either way, it's founded around a watchtower, or essentially a castle, as I've mentioned earlier, or it is built around a church, which is, you know, it's not that common that you have both very close to each other, because the idea about that is very different. Like, the church is basically a castle of the belief of people, right? So the religious, let's call it the religious castle of that time, while the castle with the little town around the castle is more like from the defensive and more a war-related area. So it's definitely more like the castle of the people believing into fighting each other rather than sticking to their belief. So normally you wouldn't stick them too close to each other, because either way you have a castle or you have a church in the center of your area. So I would go, for the sake of a theme park, for both in that kind of sense, but I will put the castle idea in the focus, so to have this watchtower-ish thing on top of the mountain, or the little hill I should say, and just have a chapel in there, as you would potentially build a chapel in by the people to live their belief and that kind of thing, but it's not the center where the city has been built around. It's a little bit tricky, but yeah, that just as a kind of explanation. I will also go way more into comments of what you've been proposing over time in the last couple of months. So keep posting your ideas and keep posting your thoughts about it, because I will try to implement them as much as possible, like I will do now with the comment of Vepyorn Fortune, I believe it is. You could make some Crusader castle looking thing to blend the Arabian theme to the medieval one. It would fit both themes, considering medieval European built in the Middle East during the Crusaders, and thus looks kind of medieval European, kind of Arabian. There's loads of images of them on the internet too, I know, but I want to separate them a little bit more, to be honest, and I can't really say if I'm going to. Well, I can say it won't be highly fantasy-ish, and it also won't be too much French chateau. I think it will be more in the Gothic or Gothic. I should say Gothic because that's basically the German pronunciation. But since it's mid-European either way, it does make sense to use the German pronunciation, I believe. So it is Gothic in English, but it's the Gothic, which is basically, I think if I'm going to make more castle-like thingies, I'm going for this kind of architecture style. But in the end, it will be medieval one, which is also, it's hard to say, but it has also some alpine look to it, which it doesn't really is. Like, you know, they share some similarities, like using wood and sandstone and stone in general. But yeah, there are also so many other things we have to talk about in the next episode. But we are already way overdone with this episode, so I'm going to end this now and put in some more screenshots of the area so you can see what has been done yet, but there's not too much in yet. But yeah, I've been building quite a lot, so you can expect the episodes to come out quite frequently in the next couple of weeks. Anyways, if you like that episode, please make sure to leave a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, do it. And way more important, drop down into the comments below what you think of the medieval era, and what do you think of this area, so what we can build, what we should build in here, and yeah, just drop me your thoughts about this. Just let's start a discussion about the medieval. I just want to do it. So see you in the next one, guys, and stay tight. Bye bye.